Thanks, Dave and Ken, and welcome back to Daytona International Speedway. We're somewhere up there just below the O. See the bright lights? Well, that was us. It's 54 degrees, just a little light breeze, clear and cool. Not exactly Chamber of Commerce weather, but horsepower making weather for this final practice session for tomorrow night's Budweiser Shootout that you will see on Fox. 27 of the 28 cars lined up and just now heading onto the Speedway for this final practice. Welcome back, everybody. Mike Joy, Larry McReynolds, Darrell Waltrip with you once again, and we found out what we needed to know in that first practice.
We found out those cars were a handful.
I know, they bounce around all over the place, and Darrell, they're loose.
Yeah, but they'll be better now. Because,
really?
Yeah, even as cool as it is, even this joint, when the sun goes down, it picks up grip. And so the car will drive a little bit better. Plus, you got to remember something. That was the first time a car's been on the track. They'll go in, they'll tweak them a little bit. We'll see some real action in this practice.
Now, we say nobody wins practice, but Kyle Busch, Jimmy Johnson laid down the quickest laps. Does that mean anything?
Well, not really, because as we say every time we're doing practice sessions at Daytona and Talladega, not to overrate or underrate what the speed charts show, you're going to run as fast as the group you're running with catching another group. So it means that those guys were probably in the perfect scenario to run that quick lap, but we know those guys will have fast race cars.
Because they also had the fastest 5-lap average.
Yeah, they did, and it's such a confidence booster to put the car out there and for it to be fast. That means you did your homework. You came here prepared. That's confidence for the driver and the team.
All right, let's get down to the garage area. Chris Devoto.
Well, isn't it ironic? That's the message Matt Kenseth has been sending all week. He said it's ironic that he's in this event and someone like Ryan Newman is not. Matt Kenseth's not exactly known for his qualifying efforts, but with the new format, the Bud Shootout, not just about pole winners. And you know, Matt Kenseth in his entire career has only been in this event twice before this year, but he has the best average finish of all the Roush drivers. So an old slow guy, as he calls himself, could actually win this Budweiser Shootout. Now let's go to a guy who is not old, is not slow, Steve Burns.
Thank you, I think, Krista. But hey, in 2006, Mark Wahlberg starred in a movie called Invincible, a true story about a 30-year-old bartender in Philadelphia who essentially walked on to the Philadelphia Eagles football team back in 1976 and against all odds made the team. In fact, he wore jersey number 83. Well, a couple of weeks ago, back in Mooresville, North Carolina, the guy that runs this team, Jay Fry, had a surprise screening of the movie for the race team, and after the movie, guess who came out? Vince Papale, the guy who made that team against long odds, and the team called it incredibly inspirational. Vince Papale will be back here Thursday for the dual races.
Thanks, Steve. Caution on the Speedway quickly as Jeff Burton's car goes into the garage in a plume of smoke that started up in turn number 4. Watch that 31 at the front of the pack going up in smoke.
Yeah, he's trying to get down out of the way. Did a really good job. Showed everybody around him, but that looks terminal.
Yes, it does.
That doesn't look like an oil line. It looks like it's coming out from everywhere. That looks like an oil pan.
Yeah, I'd say they know exactly what their plan's going to be here. It's going to be to put a new power plant. You can see they're already backing it in the garage area to change engines in that 31 car. So they may have all the laps they're going to have to get ready for the Budweiser Shootout.
As Krista pointed out, this race is no longer about qualifying. It has the same name, but it's a whole different format for getting into this event. We'll explain after this. Smoke on the water and up over turn 4 and Lake Lloyd and just about everywhere else here in Daytona. Problems with Jeff Burton's car have put the red flag temporarily on this practice session. We mentioned that it's the same name but a whole different game for the race that is known as the Budweiser Shootout. Again, we'll run it in 2 laps, but this time it's 75 total, 25 and 50 with a 10-minute break in between. Qualifying no longer has anything to do with who makes the race. It's the top 6 in owner points from each of the 4 participating manufacturers. And then a wild card position has been added for each manufacturer for the most recent champion driver or the next driver highest in points. That puts a whopping 28 drivers in this field. As Ken Squire said earlier, the original Busch Clash of '79, 7 drivers took the green flag for 20 laps. So all very different now, but still a good race to tune up for the Daytona 500, and a big pot of cash awaits the winner.
And this is not what you want to experience in your second practice session leading into this weekend, and certainly thinking about the 500 miles next weekend. An engine failure, it's an alarm. It goes all the way through the garage area because everybody uses a lot of the same parts and pieces, push rods, pistons, valve train components, and all of a sudden the word starts going around, uh-oh, this happened, that happened. Well, that's the same part we're using. Wonder if we got a problem.
Well, of course, these engines are built by the Earnhardt Childress Racing Engines Group. There's Ron Liddell, one of the engine guys right there. Richie Gilmore, you can see them putting their heads together. And I know they're going to have, I think it's 8 or 9 engines in Daytona 500 cars coming out of that engine shop.
And this discussion right now, is this engine the one that's got those new pistons in it, or is this one of the old engines that's got the old parts and pieces? I mean, they're discussing what kind of inventory that engine had in it.
Now, is it significant that Kevin Harvick and Casey Mears, now 2 other Richard Childress cars, just pulled out of the practice line and back to the garage?
Not at all, because I guarantee you what these boys have put their heads together, and I would have bet Richard Childress is right there with them, is they want to find out exactly what they anticipate happen to that 31 engine. They want to make sure it's not a common denominator or a common thread that will be in that 07 or that 29.
One of the things that you do, and particularly if you're going to make a short run and for qualifying as well, you will drop the oil pressure down in the engine. It'll make a little more horsepower because there's not as much oil circulating through the engine. They may have dropped the oil pressure in this engine, and all their engines may be way too low, and they want to come back in and check that and maybe turn it up a little bit.
Cleanup continues up in turn number 4 as the Jets land at Daytona Airport behind us. Getting ready to resume practice. Right of your screen, Kevin Harvick's car coming back onto the speedway. So whatever the Childress team wanted to check, they have completed that, and he is going back out into the practice line there behind David Stremme and the rest of the field. Let's check with Krista.
Well, one of the reasons the RCR teams are checking things is because of what happened with Jeff Burton's car. You were back there talking with Richard Childress, with your team engineer. DW's up there saying they're always fastest right before those kind of things happen. Is that the case?
It was in this case. You know, I'm proud of my guys. You know, you come to this race full tilt, not worrying about reliability, and that's what our guys are doing. You know, they're putting 100% effort into winning races and doing everything we can to go fast this year. And you know, I don't care if we blew up. The only thing I hate about it is we missed some practice. But you know, I'm proud of them for going full tilt and trying to make something happen.
All right, you heard it, going full tilt. So they'll be back out there, and looks like he's going to go for it all.
Now, the rules for this race are the same. Because of having to change the engine, they will have to go to the rear of the field, but they were starting all the way back in 23rd as it was.
Here's something new, I think. I mean, here's the Ford Fusion of Bobby Labonte, one of the Yates racing cars. And look down here below the bumper where we see a couple of these little decals. They are decals, and it looks like they are made to simulate the fog lights and the lower grille area on the real Ford Fusion. I don't recall seeing those before, do you?
I don't either, and I think we saw them on a Toyota too.
Yeah, I think about every make has something like that.
So a little more brand identity.
Yeah, it probably is, and I'm assuming they're not functional for any reason. It's
just like the headlight and the grill decals.
It's got to be, because I was thinking maybe they had allowed them to use those for some purpose, but they don't look functional.
No, it looks like just a little more brand identity. There's the front end of the Dodge Charger.
Don't see them on on the Charger.
Nope. No, definitely the Camrys, and my gosh,
yeah,
there's a moon out tonight.
What a shot!
Wow,
full moon.
No decals. Probably the only thing here that's not sponsored. Speed is dueling in Daytona next Thursday, the most exciting qualifying event in NASCAR. The only qualifying races in NASCAR, only on Speed. The Gatorade Duel at Daytona, Thursday, 2 o'clock Eastern, live and only on Speed. Tomorrow night, the Budweiser Shootout airs live on Fox in high definition. And the starting lineup was determined by a blind draw last evening. And the first former winner in the field there is Denny Hamlin in 5th, aligned with his former teammate Tony Stewart.
See Scott Speed making his very first start at Daytona International Speedway.
You know, Larry, I really think he and Logano, I think that's going to be a pretty good little rookie battle, to tell you the truth.
Yeah.
I know Logano might have a little leg up there with maybe the experience of the Gibbs team, but I tell you, Scott Speed's been impressive to me every time I've seen him race, whether it's in the truck or in the Cup cars.
I think, look at the back part of the grid. I think your winner is back here somewhere at the start.
There's some horsepower
you
back there.
Kenseth, Biffle, Burton, Harvick, Jimmy Johnson, Jeff Gordon. Be a good chance that those last 4 rows at the start could have your winner.
And probably so, based on what we saw last year with these cars really suck up in a hurry. I mean, the closing rate on this car now with the plate and the aerodynamics of this car is much faster than it used to be with the old car. We had to do it with momentum. This sucker here, when there's a hole, you can get in it.
And that means better racing for the fans.
Yeah, it does. And plus, it's better for the drivers because you got some throttle response where you didn't have to just ride the brake and keep the gas wide open and run over people. You do have a little bit of an option with this combination.
Have a look at Kurt Busch. We've been talking about the new nose that was approved for the Dodge teams, and here's going to be one of them coming right at you. This is the new Dodge Charger nose. And it looks like the bumper area looks a little fatter, and the grill area looks like it might be a little more laid back and a little less pronounced than on the former nose approved by NASCAR for competition.
When you look at that the bumper area where the Charger decal is, that looks like it's been made, it's a little bigger, which has allowed them, maybe, I can't tell for sure without looking at it closer, has allowed them to lay the headlights back just a little bit more, maybe even the grill. So it's got a little more sloopy top and a fatter bottom.
Now his teammate David Stremme also running the new nose on the 12. Now, to my understanding, that is the only bodywork change in Sprint Cup racing for 2009 is the new nose for the Dodges.
Yeah, you know, they've needed a little bit of help, I guess, in different areas, and they're working on a new engine. Maybe if they get a little bit better aero package with the car and then they get their new engine, they can win some races.
Interesting situation about Robbie Gordon in the 7 car. Mike, you talked about how the format, how you got into this Budweiser Shootout, and basically, you know, the top 6 from each manufacturer, how they were in owner points. But to qualify, you had to make sure you were in the same make for this race that you were in 2008. Robbie Gordon has made the swap to Toyota, but he has to run a Dodge in this race. So he's got a Dodge in this race. He'll be trying to qualify a Toyota for the Daytona 500.
Steve has more.
Yeah, Mike, and when we talked to Robbie Gordon last night during the draw show, and he said the best thing about Saturday night's race is I don't have to bring the car home.
Yeah, this would not even be his backup car.
I think that's his creed every week.
Darryl.
I don't know what to bring this thing home.
All right, we all thought it. You said it. That's okay.
I love the guy. He's fun to watch.
He sure is. Jeff Gordon and Carl Edwards were doing a little bump drafting down the front side. NASCAR says bump drafting's okay, just don't do it in the corners.
One thing you notice if you watch the cars from the first practice, if you happen to be with us, look how much smoother these cars are riding now. That first practice, they were hopping around, bouncing around, jumping around, and I'm telling you, the cars have got a lot better look to them in this practice. Guys have been able to adjust on them, get them look where they ride a little better. This is basically what you're going to see tomorrow night. Just pretty much everybody out there, 2 lines. Somebody will go 3 wide every now and then, like the 18, I can almost guarantee you.
You can still see some sparks flying where these things are bottoming out here in the nighttime.
Yeah, down in 1 and 2, down low, that track, it's always been a big, big dip down there. And it'll really send the car for a ride.
And that's one reason you can see this racetrack is plenty wide enough for 3, even 4 wide. But when you start bouncing around at over 190 miles per hour and that car just jumps a little bit, That's the reason our voices go up an octave when they're 3 and 4 wide.
Yeah, Larry, that jumping around, the driver has to do something. He can't, I mean, he's got to react to the car moving when it starts to bounce. It's when it lands and the tires grab, then the thing does something crazy that you didn't expect it to do, and that's when we have a problem.
And there they are, 4 wide with Bobby Labonte way up top. Now back to 3 abreast.
I tell you, Logano has got his hands full. I've seen that car. He's doing a great job of hanging on to it, but he has got his hands full.
He's in the 20. They're on the outside, having that seat vacated by Tony Stewart, who now has his own team with Ryan Newman.
I mean, the car is super fast. Look at it suck up. But I think he's got his hands full hanging on to that old girl.
David Reagan in the 6. Jamie McMurray, the Irwin car, just ahead.
But you know, I can't help as I see Joey Logano go by David Reagan. And here David Reagan's in his 3rd year of Sprint Cup. Joey Logano's in his 1st year. About 8 or 9 years ago, as kids that were not even 9 or 10 years old, they were at Atlanta Motor Speedway on the quarter mile in the infield racing each other in the Bandolero cars. Those 2 guys right there, Reagan in the 6 and Joey Logano in the 20.
Okay, Larry, you got an 18-year-old kid driving a car that we know is capable of winning here, and he calls, you're the crew chief, he calls and says, I don't like the way this thing drives. What are you going to do? Well,
I think you've got to listen to him, and if you've been watching our broadcast, you're probably going to agree with what he's telling you just a little bit. You can see that he's definitely having to fight that race car.
You can't hang on to it. I mean, it's going to be a hard day's night for him to hang on to that thing with it driving that way.
Now looking back from Bobby Labonte.
Oh, you hear it? Yeah, a little. Had to get out of the throttle. The car in front of you had to get out of the throttle. Stacking up.
But I think that, Darrell, that could be one of the biggest challenges that Greg Zimpadelli has, is he knows what worked for 10 years with Tony Stewart. And in his mind, he's human. And in his mind, okay, is Joey Logano giving me the right information, or do I need to just try to get him to learn what we're doing here? That's going to be a tightrope to walk.
Well, it really is, and that was my point. I mean, you got a kid that has, this is his first time he raced at Daytona in a Cup car. So you got a kid out there in a car that you've got set up the way you know it ought to be, and he doesn't like it.
Yeah.
And one thing I'm not sure I like, Darrell, as we look out the back of Logano's car, is he is using a double handful of steering wheel. He's using a ton of steering input. And I remember a conversation we had last year with a veteran driver talking about his new teammate, saying we're trying to get him to not use so much wheel.
Relax,
and not turn the wheel so much, take it a little easier in the corner, and not abuse those tires. They tried different steering boxes, different things. I watched Joey's hands in the corner.
Yeah, I mean, that's
he keeps a lot of chop at the wheel. And, you know, who am I to say that's bad? I'm not saying that.
Right.
Just saying that he looks really busy in there.
Look at his hands. You can see him through the windshield, and you look over, if you can see Jeff Gordon, you don't see him doing that. So that's something they got to get worked out. They got to get it. They got to get the car where it drives a little smoother. And you can tell how he's leaning. See how he's leaning forward and how he's just, I mean, he's really intense.
Well, let's compare with a veteran. Here's Jimmy Johnson. Easing down the straightaway.
But even Jimmy is, I mean, he's not just sitting there cruising. Let's see how he looks in the turn here with his, there you go. There's the 2 of them. Very similar. Difference, I think, the biggest difference is Jimmy seems to be laid back and a little more relaxed.
Yeah, and not nearly as much steering input
exactly
as Logano.
So
now could be different steering box, could be different steering geometry, could be just different driver.
I do know that everybody has gone to really fast steering boxes in these cars to make them drive good. But the one thing I do see that I kind of like, he doesn't turn it to the right very often.
That's right.
And that's a good thing.
That is a beautiful thing.
That's a good thing.
But they seem to be doing about the same thing with him that they were doing in the first practice, is just get as many laps as possible. Right now he's working on lap 13 in that 20 car.
It's like producer Sam Flood used to say, cars turn left, we talk about them. Cars turn right,
we show them a lot. Talk about them a lot.
Bull Run Run is coming to Speed. Our buddy Bill Goldberg takes 12 teams on the ultimate high-stakes road trip. They might make it through the desert in one piece, but they'll need to make it through his challenges to collect 200 grand in cash and prizes. Bull Run with Bill Goldberg premieres February 19th, only on Speed.
We got running with the Bulls here.
And it's not Pamplona, it's Daytona. Ah, yes. First, watch the 20.
Up the hill, and he gets a lot of wheel in it and around. Boy, that's close.
It's like that thing picked up that push.
Big push.
Front end wouldn't turn up off of 2.
And now Casey Kane.
Yikes.
That was coming off turn 4 just a few laps ago. He actually took it to the garage area, I think.
Yeah, he had Reed Sorensen right alongside. No contact with Reed, but a bit with the wall.
These cars do seem to be not very forgiving. When they do start to go, they doesn't seem to, they just go. They just go into the wall and scrape it a little bit, but they seem to be hard to get back once they lose their aerodynamic downforce.
A lot of faces in new places like Reed Sorensen in the 43. Let's go back to the garage. Krista.
Well, not a new face or a new place. Kyle Busch, he was leading the pack. You saw him slide to the back. That was Kyle's call. He said while he was leading the pack, it was tighter. He did not like the car. In fact, his exact quote, "It's tighter with this package. I don't like it." Steve Addington said, "You're driving away from him. Go ahead and slide back and see what you can do." Steve?
Well, Krista, just listening to Kurt Busch in the 2 car, he told crew chief Pat Tryson that his car was pretty good. They've run about 15 laps. They're going to head to the garage soon. What Kurt is doing now is running with different cars in different places on the track.
Well, and that's something you have to do. You know, you'd prefer to see your car out front, but you know there's probably going to be a point in time during the race that you're not going to be out front, and you've got to put it in different configurations to see how it's going to drive.
Kind of interesting that the 088 car, Junebug there, has finally tried to surface here a little bit and make his way to the lead. He's been back in the pack a lot. I don't know if he's working on something to make the car drive good in traffic. I think he realized he has a car that maybe he can go up there and pass people with, but it looks like he's been working on something.
And he's third quickest in this session. Kyle Busch was fastest in the last session. The most consistent, Jimmy Johnson, second in practice round 1. And Johnson has the fastest lap of this session. Steve Burns is down by Casey Kane's car.
Yeah, Mike, and the team's looking at the damage to the right side of that number 9 car, and he just did graze the wall. Here's Casey's report. He says the car is tight in the center, but loose off, and really tight trying to turn in traffic.
And that's exactly what happened. That car just picked that push up off of turn 2, and then you run out of racetrack over there.
And you can let off the gas and it'll still hit the wall. They just pick up that push. It's almost like I've said, told the guy before, it's like my front wheels are off the ground. And that's the tendency you fight here. That's the tough thing about it, Larry. You know this. You try to set the car up so loose in those first 8 or 10 laps, depending on those new tires, to give you some security, so that when it starts to balance out, that you're not pushing the front tires off of it.
Tony Stewart up pushing Brian Vickers at the head of the pack. Stewart's new number this year, 14.
You know, Steve Burns talked about Brian Vickers in the 83 car at the top of the show, and a lot of people have been asking me during the offseason is who's going to be the next team to really jump out there and make some noise. And you know, the 3rd year of this Red Bull team, Brian Vickers, he has Ryan Pemberton over there with him now. I believe this possibly could be a breakout year for Red Bull Racing, especially Brian Vickers. I think the other one on the radar is David Reagan in that 6 car, who almost made the chase this past season. But I tell you, this little Brian Vickers, 3rd year with this group, they could make a little noise.
Think about him, I think about Charlotte. It seems like a Lowe's Motor Speedway. That's a race that he really broke out in 2 years ago.
Yep.
It's also a race that he broke the wheel in this last year, where I thought he had the car to beat.
Yeah. Just had a tough time closing the deal.
Yep.
Jimmy Johnson fastest, then A.J. Allmendinger, Dale Earnhardt Jr., and Casey Kane. Welcome back to Daytona. Final practice for the Budweiser Shootout. Jimmy Johnson, A.J. Allmendinger quickest. Matt Kenseth, well, 23rd on the board out of the 28 cars that will start this race tomorrow night on Fox.
You know, hard to believe Matt has only had 2 starts in the Budweiser Shootout, but he's never been known to be a pole sitter. And of course, this format this year, the way you get in, got Matt right in there.
Wasn't he the one that said it's funny he's in it and Ryan Newman isn't?
Right. Newman had that stretch of winning a pole once in every 4 qualifying attempts.
Yeah, he was on it there for a while. And I mean, it wasn't just winning the pole. Most time it's track records.
Yeah,
right.
Week in and week out. Now, Matt, I talked at the top of our first show, a lot of different driver crew chief combinations going on. And I might add, a lot of crew changes, even the 48 team. Jimmy Johnson, Chad Knaus, they've got 4 new crew members they're working with at the racetrack. But back to Matt Kenseth, Drew Blickensderfer, one of his crew chiefs from the Nationwide Series, is looking after this car. Chip Bolin, who was the team engineer when Robbie Reiser was crew chief 2 years ago, who took over last year, he's back in a team engineer role again with Matt in the 17 group.
They're going to have to do, how do you say his name? Blickensderfer? Blickensderfer. They're going to have to do him like they did PK. Give him an initials.
All right. From now on, he's DB.
He's DB.
All right.
You know who his father-in-law is? Ron Hornaday.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, man. Rocket Ron.
So it looks like a lot of guys ran somewhere in the neighborhood, about like the first practice, 15, 16, 17 laps, and they're in the garage making some changes because this group has definitely dwindled down to about 4 or 5 cars now.
And when Jeff Burton lost the engine, both Kevin Harvick and Casey Mears went to the garage. Harvick has come back out for practice, but Krista, Casey has not.
Well, one thing they did when they were working on the 31 of Jeff Burton after his engine blew, the 07 crew brought the car back in, and one thing they wanted to do right away was increase the oil pressure. And this is not the first team we've heard talking about this. Jeff Gordon, he was on the radio talking about needing more oil pressure also. But Casey has been out. He came back in and he said whatever they did make the car, quote, way better. Right now they're working on a little bit of front end camber.
And that's exactly what Darrell talked about a while ago. These things have an external oil pump, and you can adjust the oil pressure. And like Darrell said, when we have Daytona 500 qualifying on Sunday, especially with it not being an impound race, they'll have that oil pressure screwed down. I mean, so low, it'll scare you to death, but it's going to make more power.
Yeah, you have a little red light on the dash, and when it falls below whatever they want it, 20 pounds is kind of as low as I would normally see it. But actually, when you fire the engine at idle, it could be idling with 10 pounds of oil pressure. And as you rev it up, you'll get up to maybe the 20 or 30 pounds that you're going to run it at. But that's so different than back in the day. Back in the day, the rule was for every 1,000 RPM, you had to have 10 pounds of oil pressure. So theoretically, if you're going to turn an engine 9,000 RPM, you needed 90 pounds of oil pressure. Now that's come down through the years because of better materials and better oil and everything else. But that was the rule back in the day.
In the bottom line, when you have too little bit of oil pressure, I mean, you're going to lose the bearings and things in the engine, which is very well what happened to the 31 car.
Let's check with Steve.
Well, Mike, we're down here in the 2 pits. Kurt Busch has brought his car in. He said at the end of the run, it got just a little bit loose in, especially in turn 3. They're going to make a left front spring change. New car chief on this car. Guy's been around a long time. Jeffrey Thousand worked with Rusty Wallace for a long time.
Well, and that's one of the things that these teams all do something different. Some of these teams coil bind the right front. Some of these teams let the right front have a little movement in it, and they coil bind the left front. And I guess it's crew chief preference more than anything.
And I'm going to tell you what, and that's Jeffrey Thousand that Steve Burns was talking about right there that was changing the left front tire. Obviously, when you coil bind either one, which means you just let the spring travel, it becomes a solid piece, and you're just sitting there riding on it.
Yeah, bump stop really.
When you coil bind the left front, the car is a little more forgiving, but when you coil bind the right front, you are sitting on top of a razor's edge. There's not a lot of adjustment in that race car.
Right.
Well, let's try to get a little more on the Childress engine situation. Here's Krista.
Well, we saw after the incident with Jeff Burton and their engine, we saw Richard Childress move his way down from the 31 to the 07 down to the 29 and Kevin Harvick. How is your car? And any issue with you guys after what happened with your teammate?
I tell you, our Shell Pennzoil Chevrolet is really, really fast. The car is handling really good. It has good speed. Hopefully it was just something fluke on a 31. I know they're trying some stuff, and this is the place to try it. And I commend our engine shop for everything that they've done on these super speedways. They've done a great job. A year ago, we couldn't get out of our own way, and now we're contenders. So it's fun when you can make those gains, but just want to thank everybody for a lot of hard work on the engines and cars, and just they're a lot of fun to drive right now.
Kevin said his car right now is very good, so for now, he is done.
You see the 07 covered up. That is not their Budweiser Shootout car. This is. Casey Mears back on track.
What he's trying to do is get up to speed, because we've got a pack of about 8 or 9 cars in the middle of 1 and 2. He's coming off turn 2. So I'm assuming he's going to try to get with that pack of cars right there.
This one, the spotters is kind of in your ear telling you, coming off turn 2, pick it up, and you try to blend in, just like you're getting on the interstate. You try to blend yourself right in there, not causing any problem.
The most laps that's been running this practice session, Brian Vickers in the 83, Reed Sorensen in the 43. Both those guys, they've run 24 laps so far in this practice.
Don't you think, Larry, don't you think most of these guys are running about 25 laps, because that's the first segment, and so you kind of get a feel for where you are in that, and you know it's going to get worse in the next 25. So.
Well, it's the first segment, and it puts you halfway through that second segment.
Exactly.
Don't miss the ultimate pre-race party in NASCAR for the first time this year. NASCAR Race Day, live from Daytona before the Budweiser Shootout. John, Jimmy, Kenny, and Wendy gets you ready for the first on-track action of 2009. Big crash up in turn 2. There's Paul Menard and Scott Speed.
Yeah, when you were reading that promo, we could see Paul Menard in the 98. He was like sideways up at the top of the track.
I believe it was a right rear or something, because it looked like the car just started to get all at once.
Well, let's have a look, Darrell.
It's right here going into turn 1, and about right along in here it just starts.
I believe it was the right rear tire.
It appeared to be.
Scott Speed just couldn't stay off him.
Yeah, it just steps out. It's got the look of a right rear tire being down. See if we can see when he comes by here. Yeah, I think that's what it was. You see the sparks off the wheel.
I believe in the first replay we see a little something flying out from behind. There it goes. Yeah, you saw the rubber chunks flying out from behind it.
What's going to be good is I think we've got minimum damage on both those race cars. Scott Speed, he turned that car just at, almost the last minute.
The right rear gets into the wall pretty good right there.
A little bit of right front damage on Scott Speed's, the 82.
You can see the right rear tire is definitely down on the car, and I don't know if he's made contact with somebody earlier in this run, but she just steps out. That's a sign of a right rear, just soft, and then it goes.
Now there's Scott Speed's right front. The tire is down and damage from contact, and the valence is all pushed up. That's from contact with the track apron coming off the banking.
These are you got your pole setter for tomorrow night's race, and Scott is up there in third or fourth place. So this could have significant impact on the race tomorrow night.
Menard walks away. He's okay. But the big question is, how bad is that car?
Exactly. Well, we know the guy that works on it's used to fixing them. He fixed Dale Jarrett's car here one year, and he won the 500.
That's right. Wow. Jimmy Johnson has the fastest lap of this session, the best 5 consecutive laps, and the best 10 consecutive laps. Now he starts deep in the field tomorrow night, but he's got a fast car.
When I was looking at that 98, I was thinking about Todd Parrott, and Todd had fixed Dale Jarrett's car here But Larry Carter is capable of getting his hands around that baby.
Oh, yeah. I'd say they'll evaluate it very closely before they would give up that front row start.
Let's go down to the Red Bull garage. Steve.
Thank you, Mike. And Larry Mack was talking about this 83 team and Brian Vickers. And you guys look pretty happy. We heard you say on the radio the car is very comfortable.
Yeah, so far it's been good. We're actually just going to, call it quits on the rest of this practice. The car's in one piece, and that's the best way to end the practice. But really proud of the guys. A lot of new guys on the team. They've done a great job. Right out of the gate, we didn't have any problems. We had no rubs, no major issues. The first practice, the car was a little loose, which it seemed like a lot of people were experiencing as well, especially in the long run. And then that practice, we made some adjustments and felt really good about it.
All right, thank you, Brian. And Krista, new crew chief for Brian Vickers, is Ryan Pemberton.
Well, Steve, a torn-up race car down here for Scott Speed in the 82. Scott Speed trying to get all the experience he can here on the Super Speedway at Daytona. So we were joking, at least it happened at the end of practice. You got some laps, but now you got to go out there and race.
Yeah, we're with a brand new car. I mean, I guess they're going to be able to just take the front clip and replace it, and we'll be all right. But no, it's definitely good. We got most of practice in, and it's good. We got my first wreck under my belt here at Daytona, and it came out, and I was all okay. So that's a good thing.
What did you see? Did you see anything come off of Menard's car? What was your view out there?
The guy in front of me started spinning out and slowing down, and I didn't know where to go, so I started doing the same. I mean, I couldn't really see much, honestly.
Well, you're trying to get as much experience as you can. Does this shake your confidence at all? You seem like a pretty confident guy. Are you shaking at all?
No, we're all right. I mean, for sure it's going to be a very interesting race tomorrow, regardless if I got 10 more laps or not. It'll be a big learning experience. I'm looking forward to it.
All right, that's Scott Speed, new driver for the number 82 Red Bull Toyota.
Boy, that's a new kind of ball cap in NASCAR. Haven't seen one of those in a while.
You know what I like? The guy in front of me, he doesn't even know who the guy is.
Doesn't matter.
The guy in front of me.
Now, what's interesting here, Darrell, is I think what they're trying to do with that right rear tire tore up is they don't want to drag that thing back around all the way from turn 2 with the wrecker, so they're trying to put it on this rollback. So I don't know.
It doesn't look good. I'm telling you that. I don't know what they're trying to do, but
I don't have a good feeling about it
either.
No, I want to stand up for these fellows, these Miller Towing guys. They rehearse these things. I mean, they practice, during the off season, and this is a very dedicated group of. These aren't the guys on Wrecked on Speed. Okay, these aren't the tow guys from Chicago.
Well, I'm feeling better now then.
No, this is a very dedicated group of professionals that, what they do for a living is they haul these race cars, and they do it at quite a variety of most of the ISC tracks, at least in the eastern United States. And so that I'd say that car's in good hands.
Yeah, no, and Larry, the right side's not too bad.
But again, Mike, to back up what you're saying, they're trying to keep from destroying that race car, putting it on the rollback, and they don't want to drag it around because the right rear tire is destroyed.
See how they're positioning the rollback under it so they don't have to move the car further? I mean, I remember a crew chief got in a big argument with a record driver at Talladega who didn't know what he would, quite what he was doing to the satisfaction of the team when he brought their car back. And I'm glad we're a long way from those days.
You and me both.
Here's what's coming. All Eastern times on Speed. Tomorrow, Sprint Cup practice, 10:30 a.m. and 1:30 p.m. And tomorrow night on Fox, 8 o'clock Eastern, live coverage of the Budweiser Shootout. Sunday at 1 p.m. Who will sit on the front row for the Daytona 500? You'll find out on Fox. The track is dark Monday and Tuesday and returns to action Wednesday with Sprint Cup and NASCAR Camping World Truck Series practice. That's it. We're getting used to saying that. So a lot of practice Wednesday from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. Eastern time here on Speed.
Yeah, the good thing about our qualifying session on Sunday, when you think about most of our restrictor plate races in the Sprint Cup Series, they're the impound procedure where the top 35 guys really can't unleash them because they're qualifying their race setup. But this is let it all hang out, and 57 cars here trying to qualify for this Daytona 500.
And this is a little time consuming, but I like what's happening here because we all remember the day when, the local record driver would pull up with a tow rope, hook it around whatever piece of roll cage he could find and drag the carcass back to the garage. And oftentimes, you had the potential to do more damage towing the car back than was done in the crash. So I applaud the process and the fellows that are doing it. They're doing a great job. This is definitely progress.
Absolutely.
It may not be exciting to watch, but it's progress, folks. We'll have more from Daytona right after this. Cars back on track. This practice session extended several minutes by NASCAR to make up for the red flag time. So we will stay with it and offer you a little bit of bonus coverage of final practice for tomorrow night's Budweiser Shootout on Fox.
Well, I tell you one thing I'm seeing. 2 cars hooked up on the outside can pass a whole lot of cars. Just saw Denny Hamlin and Tony actually. Man, they hooked up and they went sailing by the cars down on the inside.
And you know, Darrell, we saw that last year, especially at Talladega.
Yeah. There's a big bunch of speed up high with 2 cars hooked up.
And that was so contrary to what we'd seen in the past, where the short way around was the fast way around.
Tell you one thing, Joey Logano has gotten himself some really, really quality practice time. Because now you see him out front here, which he hadn't been all night. They've had him kind of back in the pack, working traffic, and now they've got him up here where maybe he'll be a little more comfortable. No, I'd say, oh boy, no, he's not comfortable at all.
That didn't look comfortable.
That car is just not right for him.
No, it's not.
Let's show you a different angle of that up in turns 3 and 4.
This car just doesn't seem to be happy when somebody gets stuck right up under it like this. See him just pushes it right. It just takes off. Wop, 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 wop.
Yeah, because Junior never actually touched him, but he just put it right there that takes air off the back part of that race car.
You hear him out of the throttle. I think what they're going to have to do maybe is Zippy's going to have to realize I'm going to have to give up some speed for some comfort.
Ooh, contact with Kyle Busch there on the right rear.
See Casey Kane in the 9 car back out there after he had a little damage on the right side of his car from scraping the wall earlier.
That's pretty significant on the right rear of that 18 car. You see it all buckled up back there.
Let's see how that happened.
Going down into turn 1.
Oh, check up.
Yeah, he got hit from behind. Everybody checked up and
accordion effect.
Yep.
Yeah, Reed Sorensen couldn't react quickly enough.
That is a lot of damage on that quarter panel.
It really is. It folded it up all the way over the rear tire.
Krista?
A lot of the guys starting to wrap up this practice session, including Jeff Gordon. So, Jeff, you're number 24. It looks great. Is it going to be a Bud Shootout winner?
It's definitely capable of it. All the guys in this DuPont Chevrolet team did a great job preparing this car, and I don't know if this is a car we had here in July, but I think so, and it handled so awesome there. It's handling great now. I'd like to have, you know, a little bit more speed out of it, but it's so hard to tell with these cars in that kind of draft what you really have. And we've done everything we can. Feel really good and positive about it, and can't wait to get it all going, man. And I've been waiting to get back in a car for so long, and everything went great today. So I'm very, very excited.
Jeff Gordon's ready. Steve.
Krista, back here on the other side of the garage, Paul Menard is taking a look at his number 98 car, and just saw you debriefing with Larry Carter, some of the Goodyear folks. What was your position on what happened, Paul?
Caught me by surprise. I don't know if we ran over something or if the tire just let loose, but going into one, it felt a little like the tire was going down and then it just snapped sideways. So we'll look at it here.
All right, good luck.
Now there's a dejected young man. He was set to start on the front row of tomorrow night's Budweiser Shootout, and still will if that car can be repaired. But if they have to go to a backup car, he has to go to the back.
Well, certainly not wanting to borrow any trouble. But just think about the Talladega practice at Talladega last fall, having a couple of right rear issues down there where tires just lost their air all at once.
Yeah, because Paul, if indeed this was a fresh set of tires when this practice started, he had run 23 laps, so really right at a half of a fuel run.
And just like Jeff Burton's engine, it only takes one tire failure, it only takes one engine failure to set off a great big red flag.
Several cars peel off and head for the garage. Kurt Busch, David Reagan coming off the track, and Jamie McMurray. Their practice session is likely done as we only have a couple of minutes to go. Joey Logano is getting baptism by fire from his Sprint Cup compadres here.
I can't even watch. It's got to the point where I can't even watch.
Let's call this rookie orientation.
Bam.
Bonk.
David Strimmy, the 12 car.
got parts flying everywhere.
But the good thing, David did that mainly on the straightaway. By the time they got to turn 3, he backed off of it.
You know, I read somewhere Joey Logano said, well, Joe Gibbs and JD and them wouldn't have put me in this car if they didn't think I was ready. I bet he's going to go home tonight. And he said, Dad, you think they know what they're doing? It's been a tough day, buddy.
He'll be fine.
Oh, he will be. We're just messing with him a little.
"29 laps for Tony Stewart, and for Kurt Busch is the most laps on the board. Oh, Reed Sorensen, 32 laps, excuse me. Now, David Stremme, interesting story here. The car is labeled Penske and is entered by Penske Championship Racing, the new name for what was Penske Racing South. Alltel was the sponsor of that car last year. Alltel was bought by Verizon Wireless, and because of the NASCAR rules regarding sponsorship, they are not allowed to transfer that name over to Verizon. So the release from Penske indicated that Verizon, which was Alltel, is still sponsoring the car. They just can't appear on it. So the car is branded Penske, and we'll see the Verizon name on Penske's cars in the Nationwide Series this year.
But just to show you, we were talking about the big packs of cars that were out there in the early going when everybody was running those high 46s and low 47s. These 3 cars that we're watching right here, in the 3 cars that we were watching a while ago, they're already up in the low 48s. Even though 2 cars can hook up and they can go, those big packs, when they line up, that's where the speed really goes up there.
Back to the garage and Krista.
Well, Mike, what's going on with our defending winner of this event? I'm sure some of the folks watching our broadcast right now would like to know what's happening with Dale Earnhardt Jr. He said his car is better on this run, but it's pretty bad, especially behind people. Extremely aerotight. Dale Earnhardt Jr., one of the few cars still out there milking every last second of this practice session.
And Darrell, you know, when we first started racing this car at the restrictor plate racetracks, first time was Talladega back in the fall of '07. Even here a year ago, we didn't hear that much about that. But it's almost like the more they've worked on getting these cars down, the more we're starting to hear that.
Yeah. I don't know what that was. When you were telling me that, it looked like a windshield tear off, I think. But man, I never saw one explode like that.
Oh.
Yeah, well, these cars have evolved, Larry. Obviously, I mean, you know, they're got them down on the racetrack. We came here a year or so ago, and they couldn't get them down on the racetrack like that 14 car is right there going into turn 3. So they've learned how to get the car down and still make it drive good, and they've gotten a lot more speed out of the car.
And look who's together. Our 2 favorite drafting partners at Daytona, Tony Stewart, Dale Earnhardt Jr., they just always seem to find each other, don't they?
They do, and they work well together. You know, it doesn't matter. And that's, I guess that's, I know they're both in Chevrolets, and that's a beautiful thing, but I guess it goes back to what I was saying earlier. I know this race is about the manufacturers. In the perfect world, you would hope that manufacturers help each other, teammates help each other, and I'm sure we'll see some of that. But when we get down to 5 or 10 laps to go, you're going to go with who can help you. It doesn't matter what the emblem says on their race car.
What Tony told us this morning was that he and Dale Jr. find each other on the racetrack, and the reason they run so well together is that when Tony thinks about making a move and Junior's in front of him, it's the same move Junior's already making.
Right.
And when Tony makes a move, it's Junior going with him because that's the move he intends to make. Not that any move is right or wrong, but oftentimes you line up with somebody, and if they are going to the left and you're thinking of going to the right, then it doesn't work out for either one of you. But it just seems that he and Junior seem to want to make the same moves on the racetrack in concert, and it works.
Yeah. Well, you can't argue because they've had some very good success together. But Junior's just a good guy to draft with. I mean, I think about he and my brother. They had some great runs together. And Junior's a good guy to draft because he doesn't do anything crazy. He doesn't do anything weird, you know. He just kind of does what you would expect a guy to do in every situation.
And that is the end of practice. And one thing we are seeing different at Daytona is around the inside of the racetrack, we're seeing a double yellow line. Mike, I think that was a lot your idea.
Well, we all kind of talked about it and talked with NASCAR about it. For Daytona and Talladega was after Darrell raised the question, what happens when we go to California and you got the same yellow line you got at Daytona, but there you can go below it and here you can't. You know what a double yellow line means, folks? No passing.
No passing.
Don't cross that line.
That's out of bounds.
We're going out of bounds, and we will see you tomorrow with practice coverage and the Budweiser Shootout on Fox. Hope you've enjoyed this final round of Budweiser Shootout practice. Jimmy Johnson wins practice.